not really sure how to start with this. Partly, I'm going to be using these videos as a diary, as a reminder to me of my experiences of protesting, counter protesting, outside the Dragonfly Hotel in Peterborough in 2025. Partly I want to use it to reflect on the things I'm exploring, but also maybe to share a bit with other people about why on earth I'm doing what I'm doing, and maybe to give some hope into a situation at the moment which it seems impossible to solve. I was at a preachers' meeting last night in my circuit, the group of 9 churches that joined together. And our superintendent minister was leading us on the theme of hope. And we were talking about where we find hope and what hope is. And it kept coming back that at the moment in our world, there seems so little hope. There's so much hate and violence around the world and on the streets in Britain as well. So let's just begin and see what I end up saying. 3 weeks ago, I got home from leading a morning service and decided that I was going to sit down and begin to plan the service for the following Sunday. Anyone that knows me knows this is unusual. I tend to leave things almost to the last minute. I'm thinking about them, and exploring them, but not putting anything set in stone. I looked at the lectionary, the list of suggested Bible readings for the following Sunday. There was a reading on Jesus' story of somebody coming in and sitting on a highest place in a banquet at the top table and being moved down, and talking about humility and how we should automatically take the lowest place to be invited up if that is a place to be invited to. And then there was a reading from the letter to the Hebrews in the New Testament. I kept coming back to this letter, but I kept also being desperate to avoid it, because what would it mean that I was preaching on for that Sunday? I'm going to read the passage to you. It's Hebrews chapter 13, verses 1, 2, 3 in particular. Keep on loving each other as brothers. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing, some people have entertained angels without knowing it. Remember those in prison as if you were their fellow prisoners, and those who are ill-treated as if you yourselves were suffering. And then on verse 7, remember your leaders who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. So my thinking was, well, the first part, it's obvious. It just says what it is. What else can I bring into worship with that? The second part, do I really want to be standing in front of a church as the minister and saying, remember your leaders who spoke to you about the word of God, consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith? Was I confident enough in my way of life to bring that to others? I went with it. I went with the passage and I sent it in and to the church so they could begin to prepare. And then I spent the week worrying about what I was going to say. And then on the Thursday night, a message came through from a member of another one of my churches. She'd been informed that there were going to be protests outside the Peterborough, the Dragonfly Hotel where asylum seekers were housed. We'd seen in the news what had been happening in Epping, where this had happened around a hotel, and the violence and the anger and the vitriol there. And I thought about the people in the hotel, and I felt that I could not keep quiet. The person that brought it to my attention was already planning a counter-protest. The aim was to just stand silently in front of the hotel, a physical barrier of our bodies, We weren't sure if anyone would turn up from either side. We weren't sure if we'd be the only two that would turn up. And to be honest, through Thursday night and all the way through Friday, I kept thinking, I'm going to cancel because I know I'm now going because she's going, and she's now going because I'm going. But if we had to do it on our own, I don't think we could. Anyway, the time came, and I was on my way wearing my clerical collar, um, terrified of what was to come. I'd not protested in this way before. And we arrived at the hotel. There were a few gathering counter protesters and a few protesters. You could tell the difference that obviously the protesters had all the flags around them and the clothes. I'll be honest, there were a few that had been drinking already quite heavily and were obviously drunk. The counter protesters were in an array of clothes, very nervous, coming with cardboard placards we had made, none of us really knowing each other. We'd had very short notice to get the story out that this was happening, but we went and we stood. There were police there. We'd informed the police that this was happening. They didn't know, and there were barriers up around the hotel. And we were placed by the police in front of the hotel, and the main protesters slightly down the road. We were a barrier between them. But what I experienced that first night was my first time protesting in this way. There were chants shouted out by both sides. Some had been protesting on different issues for years, and some already knew each other. I was scared because there was a group on the other side who were getting more and more drunk. They were shouting slurs. They were threatening to rape us. They were asking us questions. Would you have these people in your home? What about the Asian grooming gangs in the UK? We don't know the people in the hotel. Why can you stand there and let them be? We also saw people in the hotel looking out the window, and you could see some of them were scared. They waved at us and they gave us a thumbs up as we chanted and we shouted back words of love and support to them. What really struck me though was after 2 hours of this barrage of abuse and shouting as things began to calm, I could hear some of the conversation with women on the other side, the other protest, speaking to the police. And I could hear their stories, their fear, everything they've lost in life, the problems getting homes, the problems getting jobs, how do you afford food? And then fear of being on the streets and meeting the stranger and what does that mean? And the words spoken by one woman, there's no one standing up for us. You all stand up for them, pointing at the hotel and at us, but there's nobody standing up for us. And my heart broke. Another man standing in the opposite protest said in quite a loud voice, won't someone come and talk to us? We were being kept apart by the police, and having seen how protests go before and the behaviour of some of the people there was no way we would. But questions of we don't understand why you're standing over there counter protesting. Why aren't you with us? We don't understand. And I'm realising that a lot of the issues are the same for both sides. We don't want these people in the hotels. I don't want them in hotels because it's an awful place to be, squashed into a room, very little money, waiting you don't know how long for powers that be that you don't even know to consider your case. I hate the fact that people are dying crossing the channel on small boats because there is no other way to get into the UK if you are seeking asylum, if you are a refugee and you flee. There is no way to safely get across, and you can't apply for asylum until you're in the UK. They've got no choice. They're in the hands of traffickers and people die because of it. I want that to stop, as do the other side. I want there to be a dialogue. I want the laws to change. I want cases to be assessed quickly for those that genuinely need the asylum to be welcomed in, to be able to become part of society, to earn to pay their taxes, to live, to give to the community. And I will say, I've worked with refugees across churches who have come in and wanted to give back to the community. The people on the other side, I've never seen any of them in a church. That's not me judging. It's purely that I know that so many people that are coming into a country want to give and want to give their thanks for what we are offering. I made the decision that I would continue with the counter protests and become a voice in helping to organise and plan, but also to find a way to become a voice which names the things we all have in common. I went home that evening with this passage, seeing it in a new way. Well, it's typical that I just got into my flow and was actually just coming to the end of what I was going to say when I ran out of power on my laptop. So the video cut off, and then I realised the time and I rushed off to a lunch meeting and then came back for a Bible study. So we're now 5 hours since the video cut out, but I'm back and ready to finish. So I think I've got to the point where I'm just going to read that passage again. Hebrews 13, verses 1 to 3. Keep on loving each other as brothers. Do not forget to entertain strangers. By so doing, some people have entertained angels without knowing it. Remember those in prison as if you were their fellow prisoners, and those who are ill-treated as if you yourselves were suffering. Remember your leaders who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. I think I have a new understanding of what that means. And as I make more of these videos to explore how I'm connecting faith with what's happening with the protests, I'll hopefully begin to unpack what it means to be a minister, to lead people in faith, living a life which is good enough. I don't know if that's quite a word, but living a life which is worthy of imitation. Got a long way to go and a lot to learn. But in the meantime, I'm beginning by asking everyone, whichever side you are on, whichever way you view the situation, whichever way you view, I call them asylum seekers, the refugees in the hotels. And my call is for us to pray for one another, to pray for everyone involved, everyone caught up in this situation. That maybe we can find the way forward, we can find love, we can find hope, we can find peace for all. And most importantly, that we can find God.